My daughter came home crying and said, "Uncle slapped me because I got an A and his son didn't." I didn't yell. I took photos, took her to urgent care, filed the report, and then made a few quiet phone calls. 3 days later, my sister's husband was crying on the front lawn. And begging. I remember the exact moment my world shifted. It was a Thursday just after 5 p.m., and my daughter Ava came through the front door with her backpack sliding off one shoulder. She looked off. Not her usual tired or cranky, something was different. Her face was red, but not the flushed kind from running around. It was uneven, swollen, and there was a faint handprint on her cheek. I just froze. My brain tried to come up with an explanation before she even opened her mouth. Maybe she fell. Maybe she tripped. Maybe she bumped into something. She said nothing at first. Walked to the couch, sat down, and quietly started pulling out her homework like it was just another day. I went over and sat beside her. She didn't meet my eyes. Then she said it. Just 5 words, plain and simple. "Uncle Brad hit me." I didn't say anything. I just waited. Then she added, "Because I got an A on my math test and Jordan didn't." He got mad. Said I was showing off. I swear the air changed in that moment. Everything went silent in my head. Just that one thought repeating. Brad put his hands on my child. Brad. My sister Megan's husband. The guy I never fully liked but always tolerated for her sake. He was the kind of man who always had to be right, always had to be in charge of every conversation, always ready with some smug opinion no one asked for. I'd seen him roll his eyes when Ava talked about books or school. I'd seen him whisper things to Jordan and snicker when Ava was around. But hitting her? That crossed a line I didn't even know existed until that second. And here's the thing. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I took pictures. First the cheek, then under her chin where the red was starting to bruise. I checked her arms, her back. There was a small bruise forming near her shoulder, like maybe he'd grabbed her too hard. I documented everything. Then I took her to urgent care. No delay. No explanation. Just grabbed my keys and we left. The nurse gave me a look when she saw Ava's face. The doctor was even quieter. They examined her, asked her a few basic questions and marked down the injuries. They used words like suspected abuse and non-parental guardian. I didn't flinch. When it was over, we got back in the car and Ava asked if she was in trouble. That part gutted me. I told her no over and over again. She just kept asking if Megan was going to be mad at her. I didn't answer that one, because I honestly didn't know. I drove around for a while before going home. Parked in a grocery store lot and made 3 phone calls. The first was to Child Protective Services. I gave them Brad's full name, my sister's address, and Ava's statement. The second was to a lawyer I'd met through a friend. Family law, hard-hitting type. She said she'd be at my house the next morning at 9. And the third was to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. A former neighbor who now worked in law enforcement. I didn't ask for anything illegal. I just told him what happened and that I needed to know what steps to take to make sure this didn't get brushed aside. Then we went home. Ava curled up in bed with me that night, holding onto my arm like she was afraid I'd disappear. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. Over the next 2 days I didn't speak to Megan. I didn't answer her texts asking if Ava could come over that weekend. I didn't say a word. Then on the 3rd day everything came to a head. I got a call from CPS saying they'd already interviewed Ava at school. They said an emergency home visit was being scheduled for Megan and Brad's house that afternoon. I didn't ask what time. I didn't need to. Because around 5 p.m. I heard shouting outside my window. I walked out to the front porch and saw Brad on their front lawn, barefoot in pajama pants and a t-shirt, crying. Not yelling. Crying. On his knees. My sister was behind him, pacing. Shaking. Holding her phone like she didn't know whether to call someone or throw it. I stood across the street. Just watched. Brad saw me. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there. He started saying something. I couldn't hear it. Maybe my brain didn't want to. But I could tell what kind of begging it was. And that was just the beginning. The morning after Brad's meltdown on the lawn, Megan came to my door. No text, no call. Just knocked. I opened it and there she was. No makeup, eyes swollen, hoodie thrown on like she got dressed without looking. She walked in without saying a word and stood in the middle of my living room. I didn't ask her to sit. Then she finally asked, "Is it true? Did Ava really say that? Did Brad really hit her?" I said yes. I told her exactly what Ava told me. No dramatic tone, no sugarcoating. Just facts. She stood there blinking like she didn't recognize the words. Then came the excuses. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Ava took something the wrong way. Maybe Brad was joking and it just looked bad. He would never do that. He might raise his voice, sure, but hit her? Not Brad. I didn't argue. I went to the drawer, pulled out the envelope and handed her the printed photos from urgent care. The slap mark, the bruise near her shoulder, the timestamp on every image. He took them. Didn't even sit down. Just stood there flipping through them in complete silence. Then she muttered something like, "I don't even know who he is anymore." I didn't say anything to that either. Let her sit with it. She finally asked why I didn't come to her first. I told her I needed to protect my daughter, not Brad's reputation. That I didn't have the luxury of wondering if it was true. It was. And I had proof. Megan left without saying goodbye. That afternoon I got a call from a detective. CPS had sent over everything, and with the doctor's report, Ava's statement, and now confirmation that Megan had seen the photos, they were moving ahead. Brad would be contacted for questioning. The investigator asked if I had Ava's clothing from that day. I did. They asked me not to wash anything. I sealed it up in a Ziploc and put it in the hall closet like evidence in a crime show. Because that's exactly what it was. By Friday, Brad had retained a lawyer. I wasn't surprised. He was the kind of guy who always thought he could talk his way out of anything. I'm sure he believed he'd spin this, make Ava look dramatic, make me look bitter. He'd say she was emotional, sensitive, confused. Maybe even say I was using her to settle some imaginary grudge. By Sunday the whispers started. My aunt called and said she'd heard something happened with Ava and Brad, and that maybe CPS had been called. She said it like she was offering me a way to clear it up, like maybe it wasn't as bad as people were saying. I told her not to call again. Then the text started. 2 cousins. One said she hoped I wasn't blowing things out of proportion, that this could ruin lives. The other asked if maybe Ava misunderstood what Brad meant. She said kids exaggerate. That sometimes discipline gets taken out of context. I didn't answer either of them. Instead I focused on Ava. She was quieter than usual. Not scared, just thoughtful. She kept asking little questions like whether she had to go back to their house ever again, or if she could tell Jordan what happened. I told her she didn't owe anyone anything. Not even Jordan. But school made it worse. Jordan told a couple of kids that Ava lied about his dad. One of them repeated it near the monkey bars. A teacher overheard, pulled Ava aside and told her to let the office know if anyone made her uncomfortable. She didn't cry when she told me about it. She just looked tired. The next day I drove down to the school myself. Sat across from the principal and explained what happened. Calmly but clearly. She nodded and said all the right things. That they'd monitor, that Ava had their full support, that they'd talk to Jordan. But we both knew the truth. In a small school like this, rumors stick harder than facts. So I wasn't backing down. If anything, I was just getting started. I didn't know this yet, but Megan had already made a decision behind closed doors. And it was going to change everything. 3 days after the CPS visit and the lawn meltdown, Megan texted me out of nowhere. "Can we talk? Just us." I almost didn't reply. I thought she was going to defend him again, maybe beg me to drop it for the sake of the family. But something about the wording felt different. Less defiant. More like someone who already knew the answer and hated it. I told her we could meet. I chose a diner halfway between our houses, public but not crowded. The kind of place with bad coffee and old booths where no one looks at you for too long. She was already sitting at the corner table when I got there, staring into a cup of untouched coffee, eyes puffy, hair tied back like she hadn't bothered that morning. I slid into the seat across from her, said nothing. Then she just came out with it. I asked Brad to leave. I didn't expect that. She said she couldn't stop thinking about the photos. The ones of Ava's face. The look in my eyes when I handed them to her. She said that night, after leaving my place, she waited until Brad fell asleep and went through his phone. She said she needed to know if there was even a chance I was lying, or if Ava had exaggerated. But what she found didn't leave room for either. There were messages between Brad and a coworker. Screenshots of Jordan's report card. Comments like, "Ava's gonna ruin that kid's confidence if we don't do something about her." Another one that said she's got that smug little face. A real slapworthy type. I felt my stomach turn just hearing it. She told me that for the first time in her marriage she actually felt afraid of him. Like maybe she'd been living with someone she didn't really know. Or worse, someone she'd chosen not to know. Then came the part I'll never forget. She admitted Brad had hit Jordan. Twice that she saw. Once for spilling cereal on his laptop and once after losing a little league game where he struck out twice. She said Brad called him weak and shoved him so hard he hit the wall. She saw the bruise but didn't say anything. Told herself it wasn't that bad. I asked why she stayed silent. She stared at the coffee and said because I thought I was protecting him. And because I didn't think anyone would believe me if I spoke up. But now I know what I did was just keep the door open for it to happen again. I asked if she was going to testify. She didn't hesitate that time. Yes. Whatever they need. The next day she called the detective. She gave a full statement. Told them about the phone messages, the incidents with Jordan, and the way Brad talked about Ava like she was some kind of threat. She didn't try to shield him. No half-truths. She just unloaded it all. That changed everything. The investigation went into overdrive. The detective called me that afternoon and asked if Ava could do another interview, this time with a forensic interviewer trained to talk to kids about trauma. Ava agreed quietly. She seemed more ready this time, like she'd been waiting to let it out. He told them more than I realized. About how Brad would isolate her from Jordan during visits. How he'd joke that smart girls turn into lonely women. How he locked her outside in the cold one evening because she answered a math question faster than Jordan. She told them how he once grabbed her wrist so hard during dinner that she dropped her fork and didn't want to eat anymore. The no-contact order was issued within 24 hours. Brad was officially barred from seeing or contacting Ava or Jordan. Megan filed for emergency custody. When he was served, he apparently tried to force his way into the house to talk, but a neighbor called the police. They didn't arrest him that time, but they made it clear. One more slip and he was going in. He was losing control, and it was obvious. For a man like Brad, that was worse than handcuffs. And while all of that was happening, I was building something in the background. I wasn't waiting around for the state to decide how serious this was. I was on the phone with lawyers lining up a civil case in case the criminal one didn't stick. I was working with Megan to get Brad's emails, his financial records, anything we could use to prove a pattern of behavior. Emotional abuse, control, threats. He gave me everything. Passwords, documents, even a recording she once made during an argument where he told her no court would believe her over him. She'd been scared for years. Now she was done being scared. The real shift happened the next week. Jordan told the school counselor he didn't want to go back to his dad's house. Ever. He said he had nightmares. Said he couldn't sleep unless his door was locked. That's when they knew this wasn't just a slap. This was a history. A pattern. A predator hiding in plain sight behind a Father of the Year mask. I was ready to see him exposed. And now the system was finally ready too. Once Jordan talked to the school counselor, the tone of everything changed. The phone calls from investigators stopped sounding polite. The emails from attorneys stopped using words like preliminary and alleged. What Brad had done was no longer being treated like a bad moment or a misunderstanding. It was being treated like a pattern. Brad didn't know that yet. He still thought he could control the story. I found out through my lawyer that he had filed paperwork claiming I was manipulating Ava. He said I was exaggerating injuries, coaching her answers, and trying to punish him because I never liked him. He even suggested Megan wasn't mentally stable and was being influenced by me. Reading it felt surreal. Like he was describing a movie villain version of me and hoping a judge would buy it. Megan read it too. She didn't cry. She didn't call him. She just forwarded the document to the detective and said she was ready to add something to her statement. But the real surprise came from someone neither of us had thought about. An old friend of Megan's reached out late one night. Someone she hadn't spoken to in years. She said she'd seen a vague post about Megan needing support and immediately thought of Brad. Not because of anything recent, because of something from a long time ago. Brad had dated her younger sister before Megan ever met him. The sister agreed to talk to us. She didn't want to be involved at first. Said she'd buried that part of her life. But she kept having nightmares once she heard about Ava. She told us Brad used to do the same things. He'd mock her intelligence in public, then tell her she was lucky he put up with her. He'd isolate her from friends. He shoved her during an argument once and told her she made him do it. She never reported it. Thought it would ruin her life. She was 22 and scared. He still had a notebook from that time. Pages dated and written in her own handwriting. Describing things that sounded exactly like what Ava and Jordan described years later. Our lawyer didn't hesitate. She prepared a sworn statement and submitted it as evidence of prior behavior. Brad still thought he was ahead of this. Then he got desperate. Ava came into my room one night holding my phone and said someone had just called her tablet. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered because she thought it was one of her friends. It was Brad. He told her she needed to help him. That adults were confused. That if she told them she was mistaken, everything would go back to normal. He said he missed her. Said he was sorry if he scared her. She hung up. Then she started shaking. I called the detective immediately. They traced the number. It was a prepaid phone purchased with cash 2 days earlier. The judge didn't need much convincing after that. Brad was arrested the following afternoon for violating the no-contact order and attempting to influence a minor witness. Megan called me afterward. She said he was crying in the driveway when they put him in the car, begging her to tell them it was a misunderstanding. She didn't go outside. That arrest cracked everything open. The prosecutor amended the charges. Felony child abuse. Witness tampering. Aggravated intimidation. Suddenly the conversations weren't about probation or parenting classes. They were about sentencing ranges. 10 years was mentioned for the first time. I sat in my kitchen that night after Ava went to bed and realized something unexpected. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even scared. I was calm. Brad had spent years believing no one would ever push back hard enough to matter. He was wrong. And now he was finally starting to understand just how badly he had misjudged me. The day of the arraignment felt unreal. Megan and I sat on one of the stiff benches behind the prosecutor. Neither of us spoke. The room was too bright, too cold. Brad sat across from us, wearing a suit like this was a meeting, not a criminal hearing. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. Like someone who still thought this was going to pass if he just stayed quiet long enough. He pled not guilty like we expected. His lawyer gave a slow, calculated speech. He said there were family tensions, that certain allegations were based on emotionally charged misunderstandings, and that this was a case of one household's parenting style being misinterpreted by another. He even had the nerve to suggest that Ava had been confused by adult conversations and possibly pressured into making statements she didn't fully comprehend. But the AD didn't flinch. She stood up and began to lay it out. Not all of it, just enough for now. They played security camera footage from a neighbor's house. It showed Ava walking down the driveway after leaving Megan's home the day of the incident. She was holding her face. Her steps were uneven. Then came the stills from the urgent care photos. The timestamp matched. The doctor's signed report was already entered into the record. Then they revealed the phone call, the one Brad made to Ava with the burner phone. The judge asked for clarification. Was the call placed after the no-contact order? The detective confirmed it was. 2 days after. He even tried to disguise his voice, but Ava recognized him immediately. You could see the shift happen in that room. A slight but irreversible change. The judge leaned back. The clerk stopped typing for a moment. Even Brad's own attorney adjusted his tie like the air got thicker. But that wasn't the worst of it. Not yet. They entered the sworn testimony of the woman Brad dated years before Megan. The one who said he pushed her into a door, isolated her, mocked her in front of others, and convinced her she was always the problem. Her statement included a line I'll never forget. He never yells. He just breaks you down slowly until you forget who you were before you met him. When Megan took the stand, I could barely breathe. She didn't defend herself. She didn't try to explain away the years she spent not seeing it. She admitted it all. Said she ignored things she shouldn't have, believed him when she knew deep down something was wrong. Then she told them about the text messages. The way he spoke about Ava. The bruises on Jordan. The night she found him screaming at their son for losing a baseball game. She told them the truth. I didn't leave because I thought I could protect my son better by staying. I was wrong. And I will never make that mistake again. They didn't even need me after that. The prosecutor rested. We waited 3 days for Brad's next move. 3 days where I checked my phone constantly, half expecting something to go sideways. But when the offer came, even I was surprised. 10 years. Felony child abuse. Witness tampering. Intimidation. Violation of a protective order. Brad's attorney tried to push back. He asked for a 5-year term, parole eligibility in 3 counseling programs, the usual last-ditch stuff. The prosecutor didn't budge. 10 years or trial. And Brad took the deal. No trial. No more arguments. No more backroom deals. 10 years with eligibility for parole at 8. Permanent protection orders for both Ava and Jordan. His name on the public child abuser registry. Loss of custody. No contact. No loopholes. When our lawyer called to tell me, I was sitting in the car outside Ava's school again. Same spot. Same time of day. She was inside for her robotics club, totally unaware that the man who had once made her afraid to answer questions in math class had just been sentenced to a decade behind bars. I hung up, sat there for a while and watched the kids run by. Then I cried. Not hard. Not loud. Just long enough to feel like something heavy was finally being lifted piece by piece. That night I told Ava. I kept it simple. I said, he's not coming back. You're safe. You don't ever have to see him again. She didn't say anything at first. Then she asked if we could stop by that pizza place on the way home. We got pepperoni, garlic knots, and a slice of chocolate cake she didn't finish but insisted on ordering. The next day Megan sent me a photo. Jordan was holding a baseball bat, smiling with a new team jersey on. She said he asked if he could try out again now that things felt quieter at home. As for the rest of the family, they went quiet. A few texted. A couple even apologized. Most stayed silent. That was fine with me. Because in the end they didn't matter. What mattered was that Ava was safe. What mattered was that Jordan had a chance to grow up without fear. And what mattered most was that Brad would finally learn what it felt like to be powerless. Exactly the way he made others feel for years. It's strange how quickly life starts to feel normal again once the storm ends. Not the same normal. Never the same, but a version that doesn't carry tension in every moment. The kind of normal where Ava doesn't look over her shoulder walking to the car, where Megan doesn't check the front window 5 times before going to sleep. Ava laughs again. Fully. She told me last week she wants to join the mathletes team. For a while she didn't want to be seen as too smart, worried it would make her a target again. But now, she wants to compete. She even asked if Jordan could come watch sometime. Megan and I didn't talk much for a couple weeks after the sentencing. Not because we were avoiding each other, we were just tired. Drained in a way that doesn't come from lack of sleep but from having to carry too much for too long. When we did meet again, it was at her kitchen table. No big conversation, no rehashing. She just made coffee and asked if I wanted to help her go through some of Brad's old boxes in the garage. We found more than we expected. Writings, emails he printed and saved, notes he made on Jordan's report cards, circling grades, writing down punishments. It was darker than I thought it would be. Organized, almost methodical. Megan didn't say much. She just bagged them up, handed them to me and said keep them, just in case. I think she knows now that there's no going back to the life she thought she had. And she's okay with that. It hurts, but she's okay. Jordan started smiling more. Megan said he stopped grinding his teeth at night. He leaves his bedroom door open now. Little things. But to me those are the biggest victories. Ava had to testify one more time, not in court, but to a victim advocate who was finalizing the protective order renewal. She handled it like she'd aged 10 years. Afterward we got milkshakes. She picked chocolate with sprinkles, said it was the best one she ever had. I don't think it had anything to do with the flavor. One afternoon, maybe a month later, my dad called. We hadn't spoken much during everything. He's from that generation that doesn't like to get involved in domestic things. But he said something I didn't expect. You did the right thing, Em. You didn't let it slide. I'm proud of you. It was short, quiet, but it meant something. As for Brad, he's in prison now. 10 years. If he behaves. I doubt he's adjusting well. His world relied on being in control, on no one questioning him. Now he's just another number in a place where manipulation doesn't work the same way. And I don't think anyone's crying for him. He'll have plenty of time to think about everything he lost. Ava has a wall in her room where she hangs awards and certificates. I saw something new pinned up next to her spelling bee ribbon. A small sticky note that said, "I'm not scared anymore." She didn't say anything about it. Didn't need to. We all came out of this changed. Bruised in ways that don't show up in photos. But also stronger. Sharper. We know how to fight now. And we know how far we're willing to go to protect the ones we love. For the first time in a long time it's quiet. Not because people stopped talking. But because he's finally gone. And peace, real peace, doesn't feel like silence. Feels like safety.